Indonesia has executed 8 out of 9 drug convicts by firing squad despite last-ditch appeals by Australia's foreign minister for a stay of executions so that claims of corruption during the trials of 2 Australian prisoners could be investigated. The executions were carried out after midnight, 17:30 GMT, at Besi prison on Nusakambangan Island on Tuesday, after the inmates were given 72 hours notice. Over the weekend, authorities had asked the 9 convicts, which included 2 Australians, 4 Nigerian men, 1 man each from Brazil and Indonesia and a Filipino woman for their last wishes. However, the execution of the Filipina, Jane Veloso, was spared at the last minute after someone suspected of recruiting her surrendered to police in the Philippines, the Attorney General's spokesman told the Reuters news agency late on Tuesday. The execution of Jane Veloso has been postponed because there was a request from the Philippine president related to a perpetrator suspected of human trafficking who surrendered herself in the Philippines, Tony Spontana, spokesman for the Attorney General said. Jane has been asked to testify. Earlier, Filipino migrants had rallied in Hong Kong on behalf of Veloso, a 30-year-old mother of 2 whose supporters said was tricked into carrying a suitcase loaded with heroin. Al Jazeera's Step Viasan, reporting from Cilacap in Indonesia, said while there was an outpouring of joy among Filipinos that Veloso had been spared, there would be a different reaction from Australia after Jakarta rejected last-ditch pleas for clemency. The executions could cause a diplomatic fallout between Australia and Indonesia similar to earlier this year when the Netherlands and Brazil recalled their ambassadors after their nationals were killed, she said. Australia had mounted a sustained campaign to save its citizens, who have been on death row for almost a decade. Andrew Chan and Myuran Sukumaran were the Australian ringleaders of the so-called Bali 9 heroin trafficking group who were arrested at the main airport on the holiday island in April 2005 for trying to smuggle 8.3 kilograms of heroin to Australia. The 7 other members of the Bali 9, all Australians, were jailed in Indonesia and did not face the death penalty. White coffins. The families of the Australian convicts had paid an anguished final visit to their loved ones earlier on Tuesday, wailing in grief as ambulances carrying empty white coffins arrived at the prison. Julie Bishop, Australia's foreign minister, told media earlier in the day that she had asked for a stay in their executions, saying allegations in the Australian media that their judges had requested money to commute the death sentences were very serious. Indonesian President Joko Widodo said that such concerns should have been conveyed a decade ago when the case went through the courts. A former lawyer of the prisoners, Muhammad Rifan, told Australia's Fairfax media on Monday that Indonesian judges had requested more than $100,000 in return for prison terms of less than 20 years. But Rifan said the judges later told him they had been ordered by senior legal and government members in Jakarta to impose a death penalty, so the deal fell through. Among the condemned on Tuesday was Brazilian, Rodrigo Goulart, who had been diagnosed by Indonesian medics with schizophrenia. Goulart, 42, was arrested in 2004 at a Jakarta airport after trying to enter the country with 6 kilograms of cocaine hidden in a surfboard. He was also sentenced to death in 2005. Amnesty International condemned the executions, saying they showed a complete disregard for due process and human rights safeguards. Some of the prisoners were reportedly not provided access to competent lawyers or interpreters during their arrest and initial trial, in violation of their right to a fair trial which is recognized under international and national law, Rupert Abbott, Amnesty's research director for Southeast Asia and the Pacific said. Goulart had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and international law clearly prohibits the use of the death penalty against those with mental disabilities, Abbott added. 14 people have now been put to death in Indonesia this year, and the government has announced plans for further executions this year.